Okay, I think we're at the point in the problem set where we can actually start looking at the key and discussing what I'm doing in the key. And this is the skill set you want to acquire. It's going to help you read a textbook. When you read a textbook, a lot of students complain when they're reading a textbook, they don't understand the steps in the textbook. And there can never be a complete number of steps written down. But the reason students don't understand the steps is they're not willing to write down the missing steps. So kind of looking at it, I want to point out, I see some terms in the problem. And I see this here, I see this here, and I see this here. And what I do is I try to rationalize the denominator by multiplying, for example, the first denominator I see is m minus n. I would multiply that by m minus n. And what would you get? M minus n squared. Now, the deal about that is if you multiply the bottom by m minus n, you'd have to multiply the top. And that would give you m squared minus n squared. Relatively simple, by the way. Now, if I look at the second term, I'd multiply this thing by m plus n, and that's going to help me rationalize the denominator. That would give me m plus n squared in the bottom, and on top I'd get m squared minus n squared. Relatively simple, by the way. The last one, I'd multiply it by m squared minus n squared. All right? So I see that. And then what I'm going to do is take the square root of it. Although conditional, I hope you realize the square root of the bottom in the first case, oops, is m minus n. In the second case, it's m plus n. In the third case, it's m squared minus n squared. And then what do I notice? I notice that every single radical on the top is the same. It's the square root of m squared minus n squared. So I factored out. What remains? These things. All right, now comes the tough part. Looking at this and saying, how'd they get to that? All right, the way they get to that is basically looking at that rational expression and combining it. Let me just briefly go through that with you. The common denominator would be m squared minus n squared. What goes in the numerator? Let me write this down for you. M plus n squared minus m minus n squared minus mn minus 3n squared. And yeah, it's worth getting through it. And getting through it, I'm going to factor the bottom. You get m minus n, m plus n. What do you get in the numerator? M squared plus 2mn plus n squared minus, I'll keep it in parentheses, m squared minus 2mn plus n squared. And then you're going to get minus mn minus 3n squared. All right, I got to do the top now, and certainly going through that, I'm going to go through it one step at a time. So I notice that the m squareds disappear. All right, and then what do you get? Let's take a look at this. Well, the n squareds disappear too. That's good news. And then you get 4mn minus mn, which is minus 3mn. All right, let me get that again. 2 and 2 is 4, minus 1, oh, I'm sorry, plus 3. Made a mistake. Then what are you left off with? Minus 3n squared. All right? That's what's left on top, by the way. All right, what's left on bottom? Well, let's write this down. You get m minus n and m plus n. Now what I'm going to do, I'll go back to black ink. I realize I shouldn't have went to red anyway. So let's just factor the top. What do you get? I would say 3n. And what do you get over there? M minus n over m minus n, m plus n. And again, we're just walking through it. What are you left off with? Well, you left off with 3n over m plus n. Oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I just see that. And I got to correct it. And this is going to be plus. Sorry about that. And let me back up. I'll back up. All right, this is plus, so I'm going to get 3. And again, remember that minus 3n squared is plus 3n squared. So I get 3n, m plus n, on the bottom m minus n, m plus n. What cancels there? That. What he left off with, 3n over m minus n, and remember we had that radical there. So this is convincing, all right? Now granted, there's some condition that needs to be met over here. We're not too much of a stickler at this point. We're just trying to manipulate these radicals, all right? But there are some conditions that need to be met. We haven't discussed that yet, all right? Anyway, that's the answer. We were able to get to that walking through it. What's the problem then? Let me repeat this. A lot of students, what happens to them, they're given a textbook. They say they can't read the textbook because they don't understand how they got from step to step. You're going to have to use paper and pencil to figure that out. That's a struggle. That's a struggle you want to meet if you want to be successful in this field, all right? So I want to just make another mention. I'll do it periodically. My name is Ron Bannon. My email address, that's B as in boy, the @ symbol, NNON.US. And again, if you reach out to me with constructive criticism, hopefully I'll read it and I'll take it into consideration and make corrections where necessary, and certainly give you credit as well. All right. If I get overwhelmed, though, I may not see your email, and that's a possibility. It generally doesn't happen, but if I am overwhelmed, become popular, I'll certainly get overwhelmed at some point. Anyway, thank you so much for paying attention.